your part 1 video explanation for how to do the iXLs in Algebra 1 on rational functions and expressions. So this first video is going to cover GG 1, 3, and 4, and then our second video is going to cover 5, 7, and 9. So if you click on number 1, rational functions, asymptotes, and excluded values, you get the following questions. Let's see here. Okay, so you have a graph. It says, what is the equation of the vertical asymptote? So your vertical asymptote is going to be the equation where vertically you are separating your values. So we are looking at something you can see, this right-hand piece is going up forever and the left-hand piece is going down forever. So it looks like we have this line right about here that's going down through the middle. Well, that is crossing at the value there of -3. Vertical lines have an equation of x equals. So that means the equation of your vertical asymptote is going to be x equals -3. You must type in the x equals with this or you will not get a correct answer. Let's just pull up the keyboard here real quick. I am standing at the smart board instead of being in front of the computer, so you may see a little bit of a lag here with some of the stuff that we are doing. And if this doesn't come up quickly, then I'll just go to the computer and do that there. So we want to type in x equals -3, click submit, and we're good to go there. So let's get rid of this drawing. And then we can see our next one. This one is saying, what is the equation of the horizontal asymptote? Well, horizontally, you can see this is coming up to this line. This is coming up to that line. So we're really looking here for our horizontal. Horizontal asymptotes have equations of y equals. So this is going to be y equals, and the value it's at is -4. So this would be y equals -4, and that's what we are going to have to type in here, y equals -4. This is, again, what is the equation of the horizontal asymptote? So you're looking across instead of up and down. Let's see if we can jump and look at any other values here. This one is asking for both the horizontal and vertical asymptote. This one is just giving you an equation and saying what is the horizontal, what is the vertical. You can type this into Desmos to see what the equation actually looks like, graphed, in order to figure out what your values are going to be there. So I'm going to go ahead and go back. The next one that we're going to do in this lesson is this GG3, which is simplify rational expressions. By the way, I am in Algebra 1, so you want to make sure that you follow the links in the assignment or that you actually switch to Algebra 1 in iXL. This is not in Algebra 2. This is in Algebra 1, so please make sure you're going to the correct place. So simplify rational expressions. It says simplify, write your answer using whole numbers and variables. So this is where you really have to do some factoring in order to simplify your problems. The top of your fraction, you cannot simplify. There's nothing that you can take out of that. However, in the bottom of the fraction, change here to a better color. In the bottom of the fraction, u squared plus 10u, I can factor a u out of that. So our top is going to stay u plus 10. Our bottom, we can take a u out of that. And whenever I take a u out of both of those terms, I'm left with u plus 10. You can only cross out terms that are identical in the top and in the bottom, but you have to consider the plus sign as being in between. The plus sign groups the terms together. You cannot cross out u's individually unless they are multiplied. So I can cross out the whole u plus 10 with the whole u plus 10, but I can't cross things out in the original problem that's here because the factors aren't written out. But this one I can cross out the u plus 10, the u plus 10, and I'm left with 1 over u, which is what I would type in for my answer. So notice it gives me an option for the fraction. I have 1 over u. I'm going to submit, and that's my final answer. This one is basically the same thing, only this one we need to factor out from the top. So I can take out on the top 9w squared minus 2w. I can factor a w out of that. And then I'm left with 9w minus 2. In the bottom, I have a 9w minus 2. Because there's no other factor in the bottom except for the 9w minus 2, you can think of that as being in its own set of parentheses, and then we can cross that out. So I'm simply left with w. And that's what I would go ahead and put in as my answer. This one is going to be very similar. So again, this one in the top, I can factor out a y. In the bottom, I can't really factor anything, but because there's no plus or minus sign, it is still going to be, there we go. And it's still 3 and y. Those are your two factors in the bottom. So if I take the y out of the top, I'm left with, I'm going to write on the board because that's a little bit easier than trying to use the mouse. I'm left with 9y minus 5. On the bottom, I have a 3 and a y. The y on the outside here can reduce with the y on the bottom. And then I'm left with 9y minus 5 all over 3. And if you click in the box and do this as a fraction, you don't need to worry about parentheses to separate them or anything like that. So I have my fraction, 9y minus 5, and on the bottom, I have 3. Notice it says, write your answer using whole numbers and variables. So you could not divide the 3 into the two terms on the top because they don't want fractions. And that was correct. Let's get rid of this. Okay. Now this one gets into going through and doing factoring. So we would have to factor the top of this. That's where you find two terms that multiply to make the last term, but add to make the middle term. So you have to go through and do that factoring, and then you can cross them out. So two numbers that multiply to make negative 24, but add to make 5 are going to be positive 8 and negative 3. So on top, and I don't know why that's not writing correctly, you're going to have d plus 8, and then you're going to have d minus 3. On the bottom, you still have the d plus 8. D plus 8s are the same. We can cross those out, and then you're left with d minus 3. And that's going to be your basic idea behind this one, is just going through and doing your simplifying. So we'll go back here, type in d minus 3, and that is going to be our final answer. Let's see here. Clear that screen. So that'll do it for this lesson. And then the next one that we have is very similar to this GG3. GG4, multiply and divide rational expressions. I don't think I clicked on the right one because it jumped. Nope. Let's try this again. Okay. So hopefully we won't jump this time. Multiply and divide rational expressions. With this one, it says multiply, write your answer in simplest form. So this one, you want to reduce what you can, top to bottom, diagonally, but this does not actually simplify. So you would think of this as being over 1. You would FOIL the top. On your bottom, you'd have c squared, and that would be your final answer. So the top of my fraction, 4c times 3c is 12c squared. 4c times negative 5 is negative 20c. Negative 1 times 3c is negative 3c. And negative 1 times negative 5 is positive 5. You will have to simplify, so you have to combine those two regular c terms together. So when we do that, we are going to get 12c squared. Negative 20c minus 3c is minus 23c. And then we have a plus 5. In the denominator, you just have the c squared times 1. So that is going to be a c squared. And that's going to be your final answer for that. Notice this one is division. So when you have division, you take the term that's after the division sign, you flip that fraction. There's an understood 1 on the bottom here. So this question is the same thing as 6 over w squared times 1 over 3w minus 4. And then you would multiply straight across. So you'd multiply your 6 and your 1, which would give you a 6 on the top. On the bottom, the w squared times the 3w is 3w cubed. W squared times minus 4 is negative 4w squared. And that would be your final answer. This one is where we get into actually having to reduce things. So I'm going to go ahead and put a 1 underneath that. You have 13y over 15yz times 2yz. This is where you can actually go through and start crossing things out. You can reduce top to bottom. So like I have a y here and a y here, so I can reduce those. And I'm able to reduce those because everything is multiplication. There's no plus signs thrown into the middle there. I still have this z left, but I can reduce that z diagonally with this other z. If I can maybe get that gone. And so what you're left with is 13 times 2y on the top and a 15 times 1 on the bottom. So 13 times 2 gives me 26, and then I still have that y. And on the bottom, 15 times 1 is 15. And everything in this section should work very similarly. This is another one. This one, it's division, so you flip the second fraction, put a 1. You will have to multiply, so you will have to do the 5h minus 4 times the 2h squared plus 9h plus 9. This was on our test in, I believe back in chapter 3, we had some questions like that. So this is something you guys have been assessed on already. This is going to wrap up GG.4. Remember, you can always go back and look at those Khan Academy videos if you're not entirely sure how to do these questions. And also, if you get a question wrong, I'm going to go ahead and submit that. Notice it does give you your explanation. So it says to divide a fraction, multiply by a reciprocal. So here's the original. Notice they put the 1 in the bottom. They flipped this fraction to put the 1 on the top, and then they put the bottoms together, and then, well, they went through and factored. So you could write this as the factored form or the multiplied form. So you actually have two different options for that. Please go back through and rewatch the video if you have any additional questions as to how this should be completed. And make sure you watch the second video for the next 3 sections in iXL.